Hello guys, what is up? My name is Dylan. Welcome to the Popcorn Podcast. It's great to be back and talking about movies, a specific movie, in fact, one that we've all been very, very excited for. If you've been watching the channel over the past couple of episodes, you know that this is a pretty, I think it's a pretty big episode for my most anticipated film of the year. It was supposed to come out last year. I know you were pretty excited for it as well. Hello. Clara's back, guys.
Hello, everybody.
Back. She couldn't resist. And that, of course, is Dune Part 2, directed by none other than Denis Villeneuve. Clara's back, and Clara actually has quite an interesting perspective on Dune, and I thought she'd be a great guest because we actually have a little bit of a different kind of stance on it in terms of our introduction to the story.
Basically, you came from it from like a film nerd point of view, and I came from it from a book nerd point of view.
Nerds unite. Yeah. Exactly. So I haven't read the books by Frank Herbert. You have read the first book, or
the book that covers part 1 and 2.
Yeah. So we have a classic book person versus a classic film person here. So hopefully it should be an interesting discussion for sure. Mm-hmm. So actually, just going off that, what was your first exposure to the Dune story, Clara?
The book. To be honest, I didn't read it. I listened to the audiobook, and I did that in physics labs in uni. Yeah. And I was just tracking particle decays and listening to, Paul conquering Arrakis, so that was fun.
No. So you basically, what you're saying is you have like an inherent connection between
physics
and
Dune.
Physics in a way. Interesting. And
I know, I loved the book. I thought it was really interesting, really good. Yeah, it's really steeped in like backstory and a lot of things that just go on in people's minds, almost like psychedelic interest. And when I knew the film was coming out, I was quite shocked that they were going to adapt this, because I knew they'd tried before and it hadn't been like a great success and whatnot. It is such a book that on paper is unfilmable, just because of the like deep cultures and the density of all the different things that are layered on top of each other, as well as his interactions with the spice and his visions and all of these things that are just very mental and interior. Most of the book is about something going on in one person's brain, plus then all these other different things. And I just thought it would be unfilmable, but I loved the first one. The first one was great.
The first film we're talking about, speaking of the first film, that was my introduction to the world of Arrakis and whatnot. And of course, the reason why I became so invested initially before that film's release was because it was going to be directed by Denis Villeneuve, who has been one of my favorite filmmakers for a long, long time, well before he touched Dune. I think the guy is amazing. We'll get to Denis in just a second, but I was completely blown away by the first film. Just the whole sort of visual aesthetic that film opened up, and how distinct it was from any other sort of blockbuster sci-fi epic ever, really. I don't think I've ever seen something quite like that. I really enjoyed the first one. I've seen it quite a few times, and also one of the times I saw it was sort of a couple of months after its initial release. I went back to watch it in IMAX, and Denis Villeneuve did a sort of Q&A after the screening. So that was quite a surreal moment for me, and he was like literally sitting about 5-10 meters in front of me. So there's actually a video that I shot that's on the channel. If you flick back through the videos, you can see that it's essentially like a Dune vlog, and I've shot a lot of that Q&A, so I'll leave it linked down in the description. But essentially I fell in love with this world and this story because of the first film. It was easily my most anticipated film of last year. I would say easy. It was obviously Oppenheimer and Nolan and Villeneuve like going head to head sort of in the same year. It's come into this year, and I don't think I had been this excited for a film maybe since Spider-Man No Way Home, something like that. And you know this, the amount of films we have gone to and the Dune trailer has been playing. Yeah. And I've just been like, nope, I'm not looking at it. I'm hearing all these amazing things going on. And now finally, we saw the film yesterday. So let's dive straight in. I'm going to do a brief plot synopsis. And at this point, I am going to say, guys, if you haven't seen Dune Part 2, we are going to be talking spoilers basically for the majority of this episode. So please do go and check it out. It is an incredible film. There's a lot to take away from. So please do go check it out and return to this conversation at a later time if you haven't seen the film already. But let's dive straight right in. Right, Dune Part 2 is a direct continuation from Dune Part 1 and follows the mythic journey of Paul Atreides as he unites with Chani and the Fremen while on a path of revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Facing a choice between the love of his life and the fate of the known universe, Paul endeavors to prevent a terrible future that only he can foresee. So, Clara, we went to see this film yesterday in quite a big group. A lot of our nearest and dearest friends. We went to the IMAX at Leicester Square, which is certainly my favorite IMAX screen in London. It was quite a monumental day, I would say. Cinema completely packed out. Initial sort of thoughts
on the film.
Yeah, just initial kind of...
Oh, I thought it was epic, phenomenal. The way it looked, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. Like, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
The acting was incredible for the most part, and I really enjoyed it.
With me, the thing is, what you have to understand, guys, is I feel like I'm still processing the film in a lot of ways. Like I said, we watched this yesterday, so I'm still kind of thinking about it. So apologies if this is just me basically nerding out for, I don't know, an hour or however long this episode is, but I feel like a lot of this is going to just be verbal diarrhea from me to sort of give you kind of my initial reaction to the film. At the start of this film, I never do this, but I broke the seal and I really needed to pee just before the film started playing. All right. And I was scared, right? Because, 3-hour film, your most anticipated film. What have you done? You've cursed yourself already. So at the start of the film, I really needed to pee. And I was panicking because I was hearing the sound of Arrakis come through and the Stilgar chant. And I was like, no, I broke the seal. And let's just say, yeah, I've said this to you many times. Emotion trumps biology. Okay. Emotion trumps biology, because I was completely enveloped and absorbed by this film. Mentally and physically completely invested in it, that I basically forgot that I had a bladder, and I forgot that I needed to pee. And 3 hours later, I think this film, I know we just saw this film yesterday, and I know film opinions can change over time. And I don't want to say that this is one of the greatest sci-fi films that I've ever seen, but this is one of the greatest sci-fi films I have ever seen. The entire way through, my body was not itself. I was kind of just sitting there, completely completely tensed up the entire time. Every single scene has weight to it, and I was kind of just paralyzed there for 3 hours in complete awe of what I was watching. My heart pounding through my chest. I think it's a monumental achievement in not just sci-fi filmmaking, in filmmaking in general. And like I said, we went to see this film with quite a few of us, and we had like kind of a mix of people here. So some of us were more invested in Dune. Others thought the first film was all right, wasn't really their thing. But I think overall, everyone really enjoyed it. Everyone really, I would even go as far as to say everyone loved it. And they took something away from the film, even if it's not their typical kind of film, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm excited for this conversation because it's the first time I'm getting to really unload my thoughts, because I haven't spoken about it properly, and you haven't either, with anyone. So you're getting the initial thoughts literally right here in this episode. I feel like we should start this conversation off by talking maybe a bit about Denis Villeneuve.
Okay.
Thoughts on him?
I don't like him as much as you do.
Yeah.
We know that. I think he's brilliant in what he does. I think he's really interesting as a sci-fi director, because the pacing of his films, maybe before this one, can be quite slow often and quite meditative. He builds an atmosphere and really just sort of lets the audience sit with it. And I think sci-fi directors can often fall into the trap of just piling action scene on top of action scene, and very simplistic and spoon-feedy plot on top of spoon-feedy plot. And he really builds atmosphere and wants to envelop the audience in a world. So I think as a sci-fi director, specifically in Dune, he's really brilliant, because like I said, I feel like it's such an unadaptable book.
Yeah.
But he doesn't make the mistake of trying to make the audience understand everything. He allows you to feel, he builds an atmosphere enriched with these things in the background, and allows the audience themselves to understand that there's depth that they may not understand or be spoon-fed. And I think that's really clever. And I think more directors need to almost give the audience the benefit of the doubt, that they don't need to be spoon-fed everything, and that they can just sit with a world.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I've really loved about him in sort of Blade Runner 2049 and in the first Dune film.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. Just building off basically what you said, I feel like he really has an act for world building specifically. I would just basically start off by saying this about Denis Villeneuve, Daddy Denis, as we like to call him. Or I do.
Yeah, we.
Thank God people are finally waking up to the brilliance. I'm not just saying you specifically. I'm saying in general. From what I've seen in kind of on social media and in the film community, people who weren't really sure about him beforehand, thank God people are like finally waking up. Because like I said, I've been a fan of this guy for so long. Back before he was doing Sci-Fi, when he was doing films like Enemy and Prisoners back in the early 2010s, I knew this guy was something special. I don't know how many more films he needs to make to essentially, I don't know, convert everyone to the idea that he might just be the messiah of the sci-fi genre, you know? He has, quite frankly, done the impossible. He has adapted the unadaptable, like you said. Dune is a story, like you said, that a lot of filmmakers haven't even dared to even look at because of how challenging and how deep that story is, and the amount of layers and amount of world building, the politics and the drama and the so many intersecting characters that world offers and those novels offer. I feel like what this story actually would have required was like a fully fleshed out TV show, something like Game of Thrones. We have all these different characters, all these different politics, and so many of these layered storylines. And he has actually had the balls to be like, you know what? Let me try and do this on a cinematic level.
I actually disagree with you. I think a TV show really wouldn't have worked for this book.
You don't think?
No. Because I just think
No, I don't. I didn't say TV show would work. I'd say the breadth of the story requires something that has more of a runtime like a TV show, when you can really sort of take the time. TV shows being the longest format of film that we have.
I just think it's because, I think it's deep in the sort of. I just think it's moving it to on screen that's difficult. I think a longer runtime maybe wouldn't have helped it.
So you don't think that? I
mean, like, it could have maybe a limited series possibly. I think it's more just the depth of the sort of lore of the books, like, but that's not necessarily more plot that it needs to contain. So it's just more like you don't want to like just be listening. Like at the beginning of the part 2, we had Princess Irulan sort of just reading out some exposition, which was fine, and her diaries are scattered throughout the book, so it does make sense. But it's more just like background info that like in a book you're happy to read, but in a film you don't want someone being like, oh yes, and this is the lore of da-da-da. Like, this is boring.
I mean, the only thing I can really compare it to is Game of Thrones, because it is in a lot of ways Game of Thrones meets like Star Wars or Sci-Fi.
Less plotty. Like, I think the thing about Game of Thrones and why it's such a great TV show is because there's just so much plot, so many narratives intertwining, like so many events happening, like, and twists and turns and this and that. Whereas Dune as a book is much more slow paced.
Right. I mean, this is where your expertise comes in hand. Because
but with depth, so I just think the longer. I mean, it's a niche point, but I just think the longer runtime wouldn't have. It's more the sort of the depth behind and how much is going on in Paul's brain, like how much of the book is about his experience of the spice, or about his mother's experience of the spice, and being all present, future, past, in other people's minds. That I do think the film didn't really do. But that was okay that they made that decision, because it is just a really hard thing to do. Yeah, and
part of the great thing about it is understanding what can translate well to screen and what you kind of don't need to be there. The reason I kind of say like sort of a TV show, I mean, I don't wish for it to be a TV show after seeing these 2 films, of course. I've got basically everything I need to know. But my point is, because of the density of the material, you could, in theory,
I mean, sure.
But you could but like with regards to world building and stuff, like for example, the first section of this film, or the first hour or hour and a half, is literally just Paul with the Fremen learning their ways, right? There are things that I can excuse. For example, Paul riding a sandworm. I think that sequence was incredible.
Yeah.
And that sequence told me everything I needed to know about the characters, about maybe the technique he would have learned. But we never had a scene where Stilgar was teaching him how
to ride
a sandworm, for example. That's like one of the things
I can't even remember if that was in the book. I just remember the scene of him riding.
But my point is, it's done so well.
Yeah.
Every scene has so much weight to it.
They really packed out everything.
Exactly. They really
nuance.
Exactly. So everything makes sense. Whereas you get so many films that, you know, the events of the film just don't make sense. There are lots of jumps in time and things like this. I don't actually know how long.
Yeah. So this is an interesting thing. I want to talk about this. So in the film we watched, the sort of length of it was shorter than Jessica's pregnancy, so it must have been something like 6, 7, 8 months or something along those lines. Whereas the book, this all takes place over the course of like 3-5 years. So Aaliyah is born and is a character throughout this. She actually goes on, spoiler alert, to kill Baron Harkonnen. So she's the person that kills him, not Paul. So like she's a really main like a big character in it, and she's really interesting because as a child, having taken on the worm's poison, or the water of life, she sort of has this like knowledge, past, present, and future. She's like quite a scary child because she has the minds of all these like old women in her head and stuff like that. So I do understand why they didn't do that. That would have been very hard to translate on screen, and Denis wanted to tell Paul's story.
Yeah.
And he developed Chani's character more than is in the book instead. Yeah. And I do understand why he made those decisions, and I think it's a good film. But it is. I was looking forward to seeing her character, and a little bit sad that I didn't get to see her.
We got the one scene where she says, "I love you."
But Anya Taylor-Joy.
But potentially that's something that might happen in the third film, right? More.
Yeah, no, exactly. But no, I was waiting for her killing her grandfather. That would have been fun, but
we're like jumping all over the place. It's already going to shit. We watched this film in IMAX, right? And I mean, I've said this on the channel so many times. I'm such a big advocate for IMAX. I love IMAX. I think that is the best way to see the big films. I really do believe, and I know that IMAX is often nowadays used more of a marketing tool to boost sales and boost revenue and whatnot. But I really do believe a film like this is a completely different experience when you're watching it on the biggest screen possible. Because prior to this, I had seen Dune Part 1 4 or 5 times, all of which in IMAX. And the night before we watched Dune Part 2, we sat down and we watched it on Netflix. Still pretty good, ideal environment. We pressed the sofa up against the TV. So we had the screen right literally in front of our faces. But you don't get the same sense of scale, or the sound isn't there. And I feel like that IMAX experience, having this film designed for that kind of experience, just benefits the film so much. Like, envelops you in that world. And
definitely, there's something very immersive about the IMAX experience, and the sound in particular.
Just going on the world building, I feel like the sort of cultural and historical density of this world. I know you're going to probably we'll get to that. I know you're going to hit me with some controversy in a second, but the level of world building and how it uses culture and history in telling the audience the story, and the story of Arrakis specifically, I think it's like off the charts brilliant. In terms of, I have never seen a film of this scale pay so much attention to the small things like that, the Fremen, how they their ecosystem, how they sort of take in and reserve water, all that, those kind of.
I was really interested to see how they were going to do the sort of like, I don't know, prunifying of the bodies. I don't know what you'd call that and stuff like that. And that was amazing. Dehydration. There you go. Yeah. I was really excited for the scene where their like sacred lake.
Yes.
That they're using
in the siege.
They're using to like, they want to use eventually to like make the planet a paradise and bring the water to the surface. And I remember that being like really moving, and I thought they did that really well. I thought that was really beautiful, this idea of this like that people of the Fremen can die of thirst and they still won't touch this water. This idea that their faith in the future can really like trump their needs in the present. And I think, I just thought that was really well done, really beautiful. Yeah,
I mean, that's a good point, because I think that was actually kind of one of my favorite things about the film was the sort of theme of like religion, I want to say. That sort of theme, it really sunk me into kind of the density of the story. And like this idea of like, obviously Paul, him sort of being known by, all these different names, Lisan al-Gahib, Usul, Muad'Dib, Messiah, Paul Atreides, this sort of idea of being the people's savior. And what I really loved about the exploration of that in Dune Part 2 is how it kind of walks the line between like both the power and the danger of religion and believing in an idea.
Yeah, and how people can use that.
Exactly. And like constantly through the film, we're seeing that battling ideology, you know, like Fremen who are sort of more deeply rooted in their ways historically and culturally, like Stilgar, for example, who believes that Paul is the one so adamantly, and he was brilliant, by the way.
Oh, he was amazing.
Yeah, he was like the kind of the warmth of the film, like a lot of the humor, hilarious. I think he was absolutely brilliant, Javier Bardem. Yeah, someone who is deeply rooted in sort of the history and the culture of like the of the Fremen people, the ones sort of predominantly we learn from the south. Versus like the new wave of like the younger generation of Fremen, like Chani and her friends, who basically who don't take part in the rituals as much, you know, who don't pray like Stilgar, and you know, they basically think this whole coming of a messiah thing is basically a load of crap.
But yeah, no, it's really interesting. So that separation between the north and the south isn't present in the books. That's something Denis developed himself.
Yeah.
And Chani in the book stands by Paul to the end, even in his decision to marry Princess Irulan. So, but I actually I think I understand why he's done this. I think this conflict is interesting, and I feel like is almost like breaking the sort of white savior narrative that the like book and the first film sort of were leading into.
Yeah.
And I do think I think I understood his decision, and again, maybe a bit spoon-feedy to the audience about, because Paul obviously does become like this colonial like dominant power and this and that, but like it creates this like a narrative you can yourself fit into with Chani, and I think it was really nice to see that developed. I think Zendaya did a great job as well of
she was
portraying her and her falling in love, and then the anxiety and the conflict, and I think she was really brilliant.
Exactly. I mean, the whole thing is obviously not even a metaphor for our world. It is basically the stuff that happens in our world, sort of like I don't want to say religion versus science, because it's not, they don't really go into the science so much, but it's like
power can use religion and faith in order to control.
Exactly. You see like Lady Jessica, as she becomes the sort of Reverend Mother, go to the south and spread this story that the Messiah is essentially coming. And just no, speaking of which, I do really want to just lightly touch on this whole idea of a Messiah. Obviously I've had like a Catholic upbringing, right? And film has been my lifelong passion. And I have never really found... so I used to grow up listening to stories of Jesus in the Bible, as a lot of Christian and Catholics grew up. But I never really had that sort of visualization on a cinematic level. I haven't seen The Last Temptation of Christ, Scorsese's film, but I never really could like put those images together. Yesterday I saw Dune Part 2, right? And I feel like, of course, the film uses not just Christianity, but Islam, Buddhism, all these different religions to kind of build into the Fremen way and whatnot. But just some of the shots of Paul walking amongst the people, like there's first, Greg Fraser's cinematography is absolutely breathtaking,
and just the switch. I mean, I know we'll come back to this, but like the switch between the Harkonnens and Arrakis and everything, the cinematography is just
it's incredible. But yeah, some of the shots that kind of they were able to pull off, like genuinely. I mean, I like Timothée Chalamet, and I think he was great in the film. But I have to credit like Greg Fraser and Denis Villeneuve for essentially making Timothée Chalamet look like this prophesized Messiah figure, and me actually believing it. Like, there's so many incredible shots. There's an aerial shot of when he walks through the
people. I was literally thinking of that. Yeah,
incredible. And just before that, there was the heat shot of the desert of him walking, and the sandworm is like sort of behind him, and it's literally like almost like Jesus walking on water kind of moment. And I'm like, oh my god, this is so overwhelming.
Kind of the opposite to Jesus, though, the warlord versus the peace giver.
But you know what I mean.
But no, speaking of the like whole religion thing.
Go on.
We'll do this quickly. And then
go on, get your controversy out there.
I feel like we should touch on the like whole cultural appropriation controversy of Dune, because like clearly, like you said, the Fremen and their sort of religion is very much based in like Islamic sort of culture, I guess. And a lot of it is specifically like Herbert's book is taken from that culture, and he like he's very open about how he sort of, used things and found it interesting and and put that all into his book. And a lot of things have been changed for the film, which I think is interesting. Like the interior of the Sitges and Arrakis, the capital of Arrakis, is changed quite a lot in this, like, it's very much meant to be more of a... So Arrakis is very sort of desaturated, quite dry. Whereas in the book, it's very much more of a marketplace, lots of Fremen bartering.
Like Marrakesh.
More like Marrakesh, exactly. It's got a very North African, Middle Eastern influence. And then the Fremen inside their Sitges, again, these tents, these tapestries, the idea of like the spice and the food and all of this sort of... very taken, like what the kind of things they're eating, how they speak to each other, all of this very much taken from those cultures.
Yeah.
And they've decided not to do that in the film, which, like, that's a choice. And the film looks amazing, and maybe bringing...
They've made it more like shrine-like.
Yeah, bringing in that colour, that life, that could have been a bit different.
Yeah.
But other things about the culture that has been removed. When Paul comes into the Siege for the first time, he's given Jameis's family. So he's given his wife, and he has to take care, of the children, and he's given all the wealth. And Paul goes, "I'm not going to share your bed, like, no, thank you," kind of a thing.
Yeah,
it is interesting how there is in this film they've changed it. Chani is like, everyone here is equal, men, women. Like, and Paul's like, I'll be thanked that I would love to be your equal. I know that changes as the film goes on, but it's interesting that they have decided to change that. And that is a big change they've seen. I don't know whether it's because they want to make the Fremen more relatable or more... I don't know.
I just think
it's interesting.
This is an assumption, but I genuinely think it's just because there's so much to pack into a film.
Yeah, no, but I think it is a big choice to change... Like, I don't know, that's quite a deep thing. But anyway, aside from that, obviously a lot of cultures have been drawn from the Middle East and from North Africa, and there's a bit of controversy surrounding the fact that they haven't cast anyone from that background, or aren't giving really money back to those peoples. But yeah, just thought we should touch on that. But we can move on.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think they should have thought more carefully about how they were going to do that, making sure that they're giving money back to the culture they're like profiting off, that they're sort of steeping in the sort of, the law and the whole thing. But
I agree. I also think that
it's hard.
It's difficult.
Everyone, but like
exactly. And I feel like whenever you're kind of like taking influences from different kind of cultures, religions, whatever it might be, there's always going to be backlash, but also, for the sake of making art, you can't. There has to be a little bit of cultural appropriation.
No, but I think there's I don't take against them at all.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think anyone is. It's this idea that if you're taking something from someone's culture, that you give back, that like you're using this for your art. So therefore you need to make sure that like you're giving back to the people you're taking from, basically.
No, absolutely.
They're part of the process and they're part of the film. And
yeah, no, for sure. Shall we talk about some of the new characters?
Yes.
So we've got some new castings here. So we have... Actually, first off, I just want to give a shout out to Javier Bardem as Stilgar.
Oh.
Just brilliant. I know.
Amazing. No, phenomenal. One of the best characters. And someone, like, he gave the film levity.
Yes.
In such serious moments that is so needed for that film.
Yeah.
Amazing. And you could I feel like you can feel his fervour for the religion and for Paul and his like deep belief, as well as him like just being a kind of like amused and nice and caring like father figure in a way. I think it's really good.
I feel like even if you're not religious, if you watch Javier Bardem as that character, you can't help but just be a little bit fond of him. Even if you're like, this guy's crazy. He's almost like this conspiracy theorist kind of person. But everything Paul does, even if it means something or not, he's always sort of justifying it in a way. Like, he's so humble. He has to be the Messiah. I thought it was hilarious. And this is obviously a pretty serious film. And like you said, he provides a lot of the levity. A lot of the laughs were basically just from his character alone. I thought that was great. Paul and Chani's relationship.
Oh, I thought that was done amazingly. I really, really loved that.
Actually. So this is another thing I need to kind of credit, obviously, Denis Villeneuve, but also like Zendaya's especially.
I think
as
Zendaya
well.
was
She's really good. And obviously a lot of the first film's complaints was like she was barely in it. And
but they really developed her character.
They did.
Like that.
And if you actually look at it on like a technical level, the relationship they have, because this film basically picks up from right at the end of the previous film. So essentially it was about 30 to 45 minutes. You have an entire kind of relationship fleshed out, where in a lot of films that it just wouldn't have felt earned, you know, the decisions that happen towards the end of the film, how she essentially gets heartbroken and, you know, whatever, those you feel for the character.
Yeah.
And just the fact they were able to flesh that relationship out so well in such little time, I think is so impressive. I've also got to credit Hans Zimmer for that, because
oh my God,
the main sort of new theme of this film, it's called A Time of Quiet Between Two Storms, right? Is essentially the love theme. That's kind of the main new theme of the film. And because you know this, I was losing my shit because in the second trailer for Dune, they basically had that theme but on a more epic scope, and I heard that and I was like, oh my God, they're playing this song, this theme, which is what Hans Zimmer performed, the opening song that they do at Hans Zimmer Live when we went to see it. And like Laurie Coulter, her voice kind of just sounding like ethereal and alien, and it's such a beautiful theme. And that is, like I said, the main theme of the film. And you hear it during the moment where they're kind of just on the top of the dune, and then towards the end of the film, in the very final moments, you kind of hear a rendition of that, but it's more sad and it's more kind of, I need to credit Hans Zimmer for driving a lot of the emotion just with that with the music. Because like I said, you're cramming an entire relationship within such a short period of time. And music really helps, you know, it really makes you feel for those characters. Just with regards to the whole kind of score for this film, I will say, obviously, it being a sequel, a lot of the themes are recycled and used again, and many of the new compositions were Chani's sort of the love theme, and then you had one new theme that they brought in for Feyd-Rautha.
We need to speak about him as well.
Yeah, we'll get to him in a sec. So I mean, I really enjoyed the score, but also more so maybe the placement of score in the film, like when to use music, when not to use music. But yeah, just another great epic score from Hans Zimmer. Yeah, let's talk about some of the new characters. I know we just
Feyd-Rautha.
Yeah, let's talk about Feyd-Rautha. Thoughts? Go on.
Oh, I thought Austin Butler was great, terrifying, so terrifying, so creepy.
Almost like snake-like,
alien, but yeah, I thought he was really good, really brilliant. A little bit at times, possibly a bit like Hammy, but it worked. It was fine.
Yeah,
he is meant to be the villain, so oh well.
You could feel when they, like the first scene you see him in, you can feel like the entire audience get the creeps as he
100%. Sort of
just, they kind of did a similar thing in Blade Runner 2049 when you had like Jared Leto basically kill all these women, these naked women.
Oh my God, yeah.
Austin Butler essentially just slitting throats left, right and centre.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Like,
no, but I think in a way, because he was so terrifying, it almost like toned down the Baron a bit.
Yes.
Did you feel
absolutely.
that? You were like, oh, okay, so like he's not the one we're going to be worried about now.
No, exactly. And it's like you hear all those sort of the political figures in the film, Florence, Pugh, Christopher Walken, you all hear this idea, and the Bene Gesserit figures, they're all like, how can we control him kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's another sort of contender, but like the main issue is he's a psychopath.
Yeah. I thought he had good development considering he wasn't in it for necessarily that long.
He wasn't in it for as long as I thought he would be in it.
Yeah. But I think they did him really well. They were developed. You felt the danger from him.
Yeah. I mean, really every time he had a scene, you thought he was going to kill someone.
Someone's going to die. Yeah, exactly. You were like, 100%.
And more times than not, we were probably right.
Yeah.
I thought he was terrific. He does fight Paul in the kind of climactic duel, which I think was a pretty riveting fight overall. Like I said about the use of score, there was no score in that scene, you know? It's just the two of them.
When you said no score, that's the moment I was thinking of.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because you're just able, like, there's no bullshit anymore.
Just tense. You're just there in silence, like, watching them fight.
Who's going to die first, basically. I thought that scene was brilliant.
And I thought Paul died.
Yeah, I thought.
And I know what happens. I was there like, what?
What? They've changed it? What? I thought Austin Butler did a really great job. Like, just, Another new character we have is Florence Pugh as Princess Irulan, who sort of acts as a kind of narrator of the film in a way.
Yeah, in the book, her diaries are like the whole way through.
Yeah.
And they're just there as sort of narration.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a huge fleshed out character. She's just sort of there for Paul to marry at the end.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting like seeing her with the Bene Gesserit and that all being developed, that was fun.
So this is the thing. If I had to pick on something in the film, I would say that it would be Florence Pugh and Christopher Walken as the Emperor. Like those
Christopher
two
Walken is the Emperor. Yeah, I wasn't convinced, can't lie.
So my thing with Florence Pugh is, she seems to be getting a little bit of this recently with Nolan and Denis Villeneuve, but I'm sure her character is obviously going to play a bigger role in the next one. But it is kind of like, she's such a brilliant, talented actress.
Yeah.
And she hasn't
But the
really
role
got...
just wasn't that big. Like,
yeah, it wasn't. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Exactly. So right now it kind of feels a bit wasted, but I'm sure that it's, you know, it's, I think she was great in what she did. And she, you know, for people who probably haven't seen Dune Part 1, she was a good person to kind of have a lot of the events kind of explained.
Yeah, I wasn't a massive fan of Christopher Walken, to be honest.
So
I felt like he didn't have the, like, I feel like in my mind, I'm sort of comparing his character to Snow in the Hunger Games.
Right, okay.
That sort of older man who is a bit like physically a bit not that strong.
Frail.
Yeah, you wouldn't be like, oh yeah, like he's going to beat me up. He's not like, you know, Austin Butler. But there's something sort of sinister and dangerous just in the power that he holds in his mind. Whereas I didn't feel that so much from...
So this is the thing. I agree with you, but I also think it works because what I thought was... So Christopher Walken is like, firstly, he's such a renowned actor that it's kind of, and he has such a distinct voice and look.
Yeah.
That it is, firstly, it's a task to sort of not see him as Christopher Walken. I'll be completely honest, I didn't really see the Emperor. I did just see Christopher Walken in a way.
But I just felt like, there wasn't anything else. Like I felt like there wasn't.
He kind of just played the part.
Yeah,
and just said the line.
Yeah, he just sort of came like, and he wasn't bad, but I didn't feel much from him. He was just some older guy just being like, I'm the Emperor. Like,
this is what I find interesting because what I think about that is like, normally people would expect like, an Emperor to come and have this sort of aura and presence about them, but I actually think it kind of works in a weird way. I would have liked to have seen a bit more with the Emperor. Like I said, I feel like
he's meant to be more frail. He's meant to be. You're not meant to see him as like a big physical presence. Yeah, you're meant to see him as a bit like power hungry and greedy. And
I think it kind of works. So because the first one didn't have the Emperor at all, you just sort of heard about him, and then you get to part 2 and you almost expect a lot from the Emperor. But what we actually got was like you said, this sort of very old, frail man. But I think it just further emphasizes that, you know, the Emperor isn't the person with the most power. You know, the story is actually, he's sort of this person who's essentially losing control and power. And the real sort of conflict is between the Atreides and the Harkonnens. And
he's arbitrating it. I feel like that's what you didn't get. You didn't get the feeling that he was like sitting back.
Yeah.
And, you know,
in the shadows,
puppet mastering it.
Yes.
He's got the Sardaukar army that are the like most deadly warriors on the planet. They're like the Unsullied in Game of Thrones. They're like, you know, they're basically unbeatable warriors. Yeah. The only warriors that compared to them are possibly the Fremen. We don't know yet. Yeah. That's going somewhere. And you just didn't feel that power from behind him. Yeah. He's meant to be frail. He's meant to be someone where you look at him and you're like, but I think there should have been more power that you felt from behind him. Like that he was a bit of a puppet master, even though himself isn't that powerful.
I think I agree with you. I think... there just wasn't really that much. Like I said, I don't know how it's going to play out in the next one, but we kind of just had a few scenes with him and Florence Pugh, and kind of didn't really get to know their relationship, but kind of a little bit. Yeah. We got to know what we needed to know. Yeah.
What did you think of Léa Seydoux?
I thought she was great in like the limited time she had. I thought it was interesting to see almost the seductive side of a Bene Gesserit. Yeah. And like how seduction is power, and she was really the person key to sort of almost taming Austin Butler's character, Feyd-Rautha. And sort of, I just think it further played into this notion of like, even in the first film, that, you know, these women are actually the figures who are more or less controlling everything. And I thought that brought like an interesting element to it. I thought she was great in the scenes that she was in, but not really sort of that pivotal, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. She was just kind of another sort of dimension to the Bene Gesserit, which I guess was cool and it was good. And like that was really cool to sort of have like Charlotte Rampling's Reverend Mother, the soothsayer to the Emperor, you know, the first one in the first film. Put your hand on the box, sort of have that face off between her and Rebecca Ferguson at the end as well, like you should have believed kind of thing. And she was like, you know, that's not the point. And then also to have Paul basically slap her back in the face like she did in the first one and be like silence, and just that was really cool and kind of shows how things have got so escalated. Yeah,
you felt like in that moment the possible future conflict between, because the Bene Gesserits thus far have been like ruling everything. By the way, I haven't read Dune Messiah, so I'm not, this is guesswork.
I haven't read Dune Messiah either.
But like this idea that the Bene Gesserits so far have sort of been orchestrating a lot of things, they're manipulating all these events, and that to have Paul silence the Reverend Mother, thus far the most powerful Bene Gesserit, almost shows that possibly they've built something that's now going to become out of their control.
It is out of their control now, but basically,
because so thus far he could have won the war. They wanted him to marry Princess Irulan, and that's happening. But I feel like that moment tips the like, is there going to be something more? Yeah,
especially since you have Lady Jessica, who is essentially
the rogue one.
The rogue one, and also basically can do now essentially anything that any of the other Bene Gesserits can do. So,
and she's created this like crazy, all-knowing mutant child. Like,
exactly.
What's going to happen there? Yeah. We don't know.
No, for sure. Paul Atreides in this film.
Paul Atreides. Yeah, I thought they really focused on his narrative very well, from this sort of person that wanted, was good-hearted, wanted to understand the Fremen, felt their pain in a lot of ways, and sort of empathized his pain of losing his father and his family with the Fremen's pain of losing their lands, falling in love with Chani, to then turning into this, being fearful of his destiny, sort of turning and changing into deciding that this is what he was going to do and this is what he was going to become. Yeah. And that almost like, villain origin story arc, which I thought was really, really interesting. I think from a filmmaking standpoint, very well done. Do I think Timmy was the best choice to carry that out? I don't know.
So I think, we're going to get to a mini Dune Q&A because we've got some people who have asked questions, but to go into Timmy a bit more. Yeah. But sort of just on Paul's kind of arc in this film. Yeah. I thought it was so well done. I think, like I said, you've got so much to put into just under 3 hours. And I feel like the kind of decisions they made, I don't know how many time jumps there were, whatever, but it did feel like a natural sort of arc. Yeah. It didn't feel like...
forced.
It didn't feel forced, no. And I feel like the one shot that you could basically pull out to tell you everything you need to know about that sort of turning point is the shot of when he deploys the atomic arsenal, and you just see... like this, the silhouette of Timmy standing over.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
It's incredible, and I feel like to have an arc of a hero that feels so complex in a movie of this scale, to a mass market movie like this, is something that is not common.
No,
right? It's really agree. Not. It's either good or bad, or you kind of. You know that it's going to be okay in the end. And when I left the cinema, you don't get a sense of that at all.
Yeah, there isn't really a character that I'm rooting for anymore.
Exactly.
Like, he's kind of evil. Jessica, kind of evil.
Yeah.
We don't know what the daughter's going to be, and if the daughter's going to be like just some crazy demonic being, who knows. And I guess only Chani left, but she has no power.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of, it's interesting to see all these things play out and to follow these narratives that are constantly changing. No one's good or bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's nice to see a film on this scale that isn't patronizing their audience.
Yeah.
That is really invested in creating a world that's complex and deep, and characters that are a mixture of all different things, and just, have the respect that audiences are going to stand with this, because this is going to be amazing, and we're going to, have our filmmaking to the highest level, and this is going to be a really interesting and relevant story.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know we have a question from Panma about this, so we'll get more into it. But like this whole idea of like the cost of revenge, because initially it's about revenge, about getting revenge on for his father, for the fall of House Atreides. It's initially what it starts out as, but there comes a point where you question, like, is Paul going away? Has he gone too far? and the character he is at the end of the film is obviously a very different character at the start of the film. And I think the decision to have the final shot on Chani was so great.
Oh, I so
because
agree.
it sort of left you there like with your heart in your mouth almost, and like.
And you like really felt her like heartbreak at the end of the film.
Yeah, it is really heartbreaking.
Yeah, no, incredible.
So yeah, we have like a little mini Q&A section that we're going to do for Dune. I've asked sort of friends and kind of people on social media if they want to ask any questions. We've got a few that we can go on. The first of which is, a couple of people asked this, is Denis Villeneuve ranking, right?
All his films?
Yes. So I don't think we can do all his films, like as in like...
Should we do like top 3?
Yeah, let's do top 3. So the thing is, I just do want to say, it's just that I feel like Denis Villeneuve's filmography is like, the films are always changing for me, depending on when I watch them, what time I watch them in my life, and like all these things. And I think I've given so many of his films 5 stars. Like it's insane.
I feel like now I'm going to miss one.
What?
Well, like one of his films.
Okay.
I'm like trying to think, like really go quickly through his filmography in my head.
Let's go. Okay, so from like it says Onsendi. Enemy, Prisoners, Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, Dune Part 2.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah, that's more or less. So your top 3.
You go first, let me think.
Okay, my top 3 are, I think I want to say Onsendi.
That's definitely my
I think I might have to say Dune Part 2. I think.
Oh, let's leave out Dune.
Okay, we're not doing Dune. But Theo has asked, where does Dune...
Okay, fine, do Dune.
I would say Dune Part 2 is in my top 3. I would need to rewatch it and really see. I want to say Blade Runner 2049. I think Blade Runner 2049.
We can't have the same list. This is not okay.
What? We're going to have the same list?
Yeah, mine's Onsendi 2049 and Dune Part 1.
Dune Part 1?
I think I need to ruminate more on Dune Part 2.
Really?
I'm not sure where it sits. And
you like Dune Part 1 better than Dune Part 2?
Possibly, yeah.
Interesting.
I liked the slow, immersive pace. It was like of Dune Part 1. I liked the really 2001 Space Odyssey kind of music with the spaceships of like interesting shapes, which is really niche. I really enjoy it.
We're just a weirdo. I like the shapes of the spaceships. I'm just kidding.
There was like, just the sort of space opera vibe of the first one I really enjoyed.
Like one scene.
It's not one scene.
There's like the Herald of the Change scene at the start.
Yeah. And like
where they come in like a dome.
Yeah, but I felt like quite often they had more, like even just on Arrakis with like the like harvesters. Not the ornithopters, they were a bit dead. They were just helicopters. But like with the like
dragonflies though.
Okay, fine. Dragonfly helicopters. Well done. No, just I think they really, I really like that kind of stuff. I think that's, very 2001, but really, really good, and with a different and amazing score. Yeah, I really enjoyed all of that. But
no, definitely.
But I'd have to rewatch part 2. Might make it, just not yet.
Okay, cool. Right. I'm gonna squeeze right now. I'm gonna squeeze in part 2 just because I'm on such a high of that film. Yeah. So I would say Onsendi, which by the way, if no one has watched, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen Onsendi from Denis Villeneuve, don't miss it because it's one of his very best.
Very brilliant, very scarring.
Very scarring. So just go and watch it. And obviously, before he made that kind of transition to sci-fi, he was very much a dramatic kind of director. He did like obviously Enemy. That film is a bit sort of mixed, I guess. Onsendi, Prisoners. Those really sort of hard-hitting, emotional.
What's the one about
dramas.
The school?
Oh, Polytechnic. That was a black and white short film that he did, which was just brilliant and harrowing. That's also like fantastic, but in a soul-crushing way, I guess. Blade Runner 2049, Dune Part 2, and Onsendi, I would say. That's my top 3. And
mine's Part 1, not Part 2. But maybe Part 2 in the future, I don't know.
So we have a question. This is why I kind of want to save it for this section. Is Timothée Chalamet overrated? You go first.
I think currently he's a little bit overrated, like generally. I think he was miscast in Wonka terribly. This is just true. I think I think he's great at playing the like what's it called? The romantic lead and stuff. Like Call Me by Your Name, Bones and All. He was great in Beautiful Boy, actually. I know it's not the romantic lead, but like sort of the similar realistic, troubled. Lady Bird, I thought he was amazing. But not miscast in Wonka. I thought he was good in Part 1, sort of a young guy, not really knowing what he's doing, a bit lost. Did I do I believe him as a fanatic villain or like this power-hungry person? I believed him so much when he was falling in love with Chani. I think he was helped by Denis, and
Greg Fraser,
sorry. Brilliance in their filmmaking, in Hans Zimmer's score, like all these things boosted this like powerful messiah character. I don't feel like necessarily that was him.
Okay.
That's what I feel.
Interesting.
But again, like the film was just so brilliant that does it matter? Maybe it just doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think it's difficult with this film. It's almost like we said, like he's a different person by the end of the film. So he's going through all these different kind of highs and lows and emotions and whatnot. He's almost got it's like a complete palette of acting.
Yeah,
in a way.
Exactly. And I felt it from everything else. Did I feel it from him?
Yeah. I think a lot of people say Timothée Chalamet is overrated. I've always kind of stood by him. I don't think he's overrated. I just think people have kind of just, in a way, since his career started, kind of just... He's like the pretty boy, right? Like, and he plays, like you said, the heartthrobs really well.
He's really good at that.
Call Me by Your Name. He's great. Lady Bird, he's great. Even though he was kind of just like
he was a dick, but
he was a dick. He was kind of just.
But he was good at it. Like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Little Women, he was good
Women,
as well.
Yeah, he was brilliant in that.
He was great as well. My favorite performance from him is 100% Beautiful Boy.
Yeah,
right?
phenomenal.
And that is less about the sort of Hollywood heartthrob and more sort of this.
Yeah.
That's a real character piece that he does. And
amazing.
I completely believe him.
I do think he's a great actor.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I just do think maybe that he just possibly doesn't fit in some roles.
Yeah. I just think people use the word overrated because they see a star quite often, and it's easier to label stars as overrated. I think that loads of people are jumping on this overrated Timothée Chalamet train, and I just think that most of those people haven't seen the kind of other stuff that he's done, and they sort of just see him in something like Dune. Like the amount of people I've heard say, "Oh, Dune, is that the one with that Timothée Chalamet person?" Yeah, and they just see Dune. They don't see any of his other work, so they don't really know what he's kind of capable of as an actor.
But he's become such a phenomenon.
Yeah.
As a person and as a celebrity.
Yeah.
That he is getting cast in other stuff that maybe isn't perfect for his style of acting.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's where what I'm getting at. I think maybe overrated is the wrong... I don't know what the word is, but I do think he was miscast in Wonka.
Yeah.
Do I think he is the best person to play Paul? I don't know. He's good. He's very good.
Yeah.
But...
I think Wonka aside, Wonka aside, Beautiful Boy is my best, my favorite performance of him. I liked him a lot in The King. I will say, I just do. I know you don't agree.
Sure.
I know you don't agree, but I believed him as that character, even though like he was shouting in a British accent for the majority of the time, and I just do. I think his strong point as an actor is the emotional stuff.
Yeah, I think it's the quiet emotions.
Yeah, he's really good in that. Don't Look Up, he just plays someone completely hilarious.
Oh my god, I love him at that note. That's my favourite Timothée Chalamet role.
So if you look at all these roles, he's actually played quite varied.
No, I agree.
He's had quite varied performances.
But I think realistic. I don't know if he can do the epic.
You don't know if he can do the epic?
He can do the small, realistic interior stuff.
Yeah.
Amazingly. I think he is a really brilliant actor. Don't get me wrong. Could I do that? No, I could not do that. But maybe not the epic, and definitely not the camp funny chocolate factory owner. So definitely not.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've got your back, Timmy. You look okay. Next question is: does Dune top Interstellar for you in terms of sci-fi?
This is impossible.
I don't think it's impossible. I just think that it's I guess it is impossible because it's two completely different kind of sci-fi approaches in a way.
Yeah, and Interstellar is the film that made me love physics.
Yeah, so there's that bias, isn't there?
But Dune is just brilliant, and I love the books and I've loved the film, so I don't know.
But this is the thing, it's like almost comparing I don't know.
Two brilliant Hans Zimmer scores.
Yeah, two amazing Hans Zimmer scores. I think Interstellar's is better though.
Interstellar's score is better than Dune's score.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Interesting.
Do you not agree?
I don't know, I can't make up my mind.
Okay. Well, anyways, I think, Interstellar has definitely more of obviously a singular vision. It's just one film and a singular story, right? And what it does is it gives you an emotional journey that Dune doesn't quite have, but it's tackling different emotions. Dune, the thing is, it's obviously based on the books. It's such a dense...
I can't lie, I feel like the place in my life that I'm at right now, Dune is winning for me. I feel like the complex character stuff, the like epic war, I don't know, I think that's all really interesting.
And relevant.
Whereas I feel like Interstellar, don't get me wrong, love the film. The like plot holes, the slightly tear-jerky.
Wow, so the Interstellar charm's rubbing off you a bit.
A little bit, maybe, yeah. I don't know. I do love that film, but I think there is something, yeah.
What I think this is a case of is, I agree with you as well, a little bit. It's like Interstellar, when we first saw it, it's amazing. It still is. It's still a 5 out of 5 star film. I think it's Nolan's admittedly flawed masterpiece, like I was saying before. But this is just testament to Dune as well. It's just Dune has sort of cemented itself now as this, I would say, a pinnacle of sci-fi.
Yeah, we haven't seen something like this.
No, we haven't. And now what it's done is it's pushed sort of sci-fi filmmaking in a completely different direction now. And now it has that kind of structural impact that maybe something Interstellar doesn't have, because Interstellar is so singular and unique, and it's kind of like a gem within like loads of
within
rocks.
Its genre. Yeah.
Whereas Dune is this epic, it's
new.
It's new. It's obviously way more franchise kind of based, but also has a non-franchise appeal about it, which is something I really love about it.
Yeah.
But in terms of sci-fi, your question is specifically sci-fi, Dune is just more dense and kind of, it's got so much more going for it. So yeah. Okay, so Panwa, our good friend Panwa, we miss you, Panwa. He's given us 3 questions, and these 3 questions are quite wordy, so do bear with us. So the first question is, this part 2 has allowed the Dune franchise to go down as one of the great cinematic epics, but unlike most of the others, which are often stories that span different kingdoms, planets, multiverses, as well as have a wide host of characters, this story takes place mostly in the same locations with a consistent visual style and mostly the same characters. And yet, it will most definitely be mentioned in the same breath as Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, etc., despite on paper not being as big or as sprawling. What do you believe is that special element that will allow it to exist alongside these iconic names?
Okay, so basically it exists in one place. So, okay. I feel like that is in a way its strength.
Yeah.
That it's focusing on developing more deep and nuanced portrayals of these individual characters and these individual places. And so far we've seen 3 different planets. Yeah. Basically 3 different, big houses, big names, this and that. It's quite sprawling. I mean,
yeah. No, it is a massive story.
But no, I think it gives nuance, and I think that people appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. So this is the thing. This is so what I agree with you. I think what is gonna make Dune exist alongside of some of those amazing names is the filmmaking and the approach to that story.
Yeah.
Is you do not get this kind of approach, this complex, nuanced way of storytelling in modern franchises. You don't. You look at things like Marvel and you look at DC and you look at all these big IPs and stuff. Even the new Star Wars, it's so spoon-feedy and just like mass marketed and just trying to get people in cinemas and not really exploring the depth of these characters in the story in a way that Dune does.
But a lot of these things were based off Dune, like the Jedis, and the voice, and like all this kind of stuff.
Which is why it's even more satisfying for like this franchise to come along and be like, hey, I mean, we were doing it first. So I think its distinct style, from a visual perspective, but also just its approach to filmmaking, is actually going to challenge modern audiences to kind of be like, oh, there's actually something different that I haven't kind of experienced before.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't like it, or maybe I do. I love it. So it's pushing sort of franchise filmmaking.
It's a bit of a breath of fresh air.
Exactly, in a different kind of direction. But that's what I think about Denis Villeneuve when he does sci-fi. It's like these intimate stories, but he tells them on the biggest scale kind of thing. Kind of works from inwards out kind of thing. Yeah. And I think it's just brilliant. Panwa's second question is, speaking of visuals, Greg Fraser will most likely win another Oscar for his work here, with Denis having worked with some of the best cinematographers alive. Who would you personally have liked to have shot the Dune films if it wasn't Fraser? And you can't say Roger Deakins.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Then I don't know.
Okay, so firstly, I just want to preface by saying I don't think I would. If I had a choice between Roger Deakins and Greg Fraser, I'd still pick Greg Fraser, because now that this is
the style. This is brilliant. This is Dune.
It doesn't work without Greg Fraser. It doesn't now. Yeah, I mean, this film was just gorgeous. I'm not even gonna go in there, but like, just hats off to Greg Fraser. If I had to pick any other like kind of cinematographers that maybe I would like to see their kind of vision, I don't know if I'd pick Hoyte van Hoytema. I don't know if I maybe he could do something interesting. I'm sure he would. He's a legendary cinematographer. Linus Sandgren maybe. Someone maybe that I would pick would be Vittorio Storaro, who shot Apocalypse Now. I think he would have a really cool sort of take on Dune. But yeah, like I said, I would now. I don't think anyone could do better. Like, there's no way.
Definitely no.
Oh, this is another question from Anna. So if Dune 2 had stuck to its original release date, which I think was in November, would it have certainly had a strong presence at this year's Oscars race? How much of a difference do you think it would have made in this year's awards race? I.e., how relieved do you think Nolan is?
I feel like the Academy would have gone still towards Oppenheimer.
Same.
Just because of their like love of biopics and this and that. I think it rivals Oppenheimer in its caliber of filmmaking? Yeah, 100%. Like, they're both brilliant.
Yeah, I think caliber of filmmaking is something, that I 100% agree. They're both like incredible filmmakers doing very different stories and very different genres, of course. I still think Oppenheimer would have got the majority of love there. Do I think that Dune Part 2 would have been received as well as Dune Part 1 did at the Oscars? No. And even though I think Dune Part 2 is a better film in a lot of ways. It's also partly
because it is a sequel.
It's a sequel, exactly. And like things like the score, which the first part won, I don't even think it would have been nominated for this, because you could just argue that
it's the same.
It's a lot of recycled themes, right? There's one thing. Greg Fraser's cinematography, next year, it has to. It's so good that it can't be ignored, kind of thing, right? I think Denis Villeneuve should get a nod for directing. I think so many different things, like the sound of that film is incredible. So many of the technical aspects, I think it could have potentially won. If Dune Part 2 was in the Oscars race, I still think Oppenheimer would have taken it, just because of
100%.
the typical Academy sort of taste,
the biopic,
right?
Serious issues.
Yeah, and this is Pinewar's finally his last question. Finally, as intricate and as dense as this film is, Dune 2 is very much a fuck-off, massive, colossal, gigantic, gargantuan behemoth of a film. One that costs less than most superhero films and looks twice as expensive. I actually don't know the budget for this film. With its popularity surging, not just because of the brand name, but because people, including non-film fans, are aware of Denis' brilliance. How much of a shift do you believe this will create in the industry, both with studios and creatives? Do you think big studios will finally wake up and realize you can actually make successful, huge-scale films without making them feel like cheap products? And do you think a film that is both huge in scale and is intricate in intellect and emotion will strike fear into the hearts of the creatives who refuse to believe that doing this is still possible in this day and age? Or will it inspire up-and-coming filmmakers to strive for the stars, as they are now reminded how unlimited in potential our medium truly is?
Can I just say, with the utmost love, how does Panwa manage to stay for this long and he's not even here?
Panwa's still here. I hope so, man. I hope this is like the start of something brilliant in blockbuster mass market films. Like I really want this 100%, to be.
Yeah, I hope that all these big, like I know you did a episode on the failings of the MCU, but I hope these big studios do really take note that audiences want interesting plots. They want nuance. They want character development. They want things that are rich. And artful. They don't just want schlock that you can bang out quickly and hope people come to see. So we're praying.
I hope that this inspires loads of filmmakers to kind of see that this is a possible thing at some point. So yes, on the other hand, I actually do think it's actually important that we have both those kind of films, like the easy kind of accessible kind of films that a lot of people can enjoy.
That are funnier.
That are funny and kind of just easy to kind of consume. I think if the film is good, there's nothing wrong with it. Unless it's utter trash like Madam Web, which is unwatchable. It's so bad that you can't even get the...
No, I can't it was so bad it was funny. That's my take.
Well, there we go. I think it's good to have both those kind of... It's good to have a variety of blockbusters, I want to say. Because if every blockbuster is the same, then you get monotony, and that's not good in the industry.
Yeah, but hopefully this film will inspire people to do different things. Not necessarily copy Denis,
Exactly.
But, like, try and do their own thing and bring their own voice.
Exactly. And unfortunately, the numbers will basically do the talking, basically. If this film... I think this film... I mean...
Let's hope it does well.
I
IMAX
think it
was packed. But
yeah, IMAX was fully sold out. I hope it does well. I think it will do well. Yeah, I sure hope so. So, yeah, that's kind of it for our little Q&A segment. The final segment of this episode is, of course, our Letterboxd reactions. So... let's get into them. So first up, the film drunk, who I love, by the way. Watching this in IMAX whilst fisting the Dune popcorn bucket is the correct way to watch. This is what movies were made for. I'm so sad. Like Mickey said, yes, I'm so sad they didn't have it available.
That was so jokes.
The Dune popcorn bucket we're talking about. If you don't know what we're talking about, just go and search it up. So Sydney has rated this 5 stars and says, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
Fair enough. I see that.
Yep. Right with you, Sydney. Connor eats pants.
Did you just pick that because of his name?
No. 5 stars. He said, "I have seen the light of Islam." Sure. Why not? Tyler has given the film 5 stars. Oh, a lot of 5 stars. This film is doing very well, isn't it?
I feel like you should have picked a bad one. We can argue.
Let's see if there are any bad ones. So yeah, 5 stars. Leaving Arrakis and coming back to our shitty reality after the movie ended was absolutely devastating. I mean,
to be fair, I felt a bit shook after the film ended. Like, I just didn't really know what to say or do or think. I think I turned to you, I was like, "What did you think?" And you were just like...
That is an accurate representation. Yeah. I was just like, just don't talk to me. Kit Laser has given the film 5 stars and says, "The only bad thing about this movie is looking ahead to Paul Atreides having more toxic fans than Eren Yeager. People are going to say it was overhyped. Do you want me to fucking lie to you and say that I didn't burst into tears from the sheer audacity of it all? Well, I won't do it. Don't fear the hype. Fear is the mind killer."
I feel like that's such a Panwa review. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's something about Paul Atreides having more toxic fans than Eren Yeager. Eren Yeager is the main character from Attack on Titan. Sure. I haven't really seen the toxic fans of Paul Atreides just yet. Maybe I'm one of them. Maybe I'm oblivious. So Cam Walsh, giving the film 5 out of 5 stars. "This is truly the cinematic event of our generation. Don't take it for granted. 100 out of 100. Sure.
I mean, cinematic event of our generation.
It's one of them, for sure.
Yeah. I would have to think more carefully, but...
Yeah. Corey has also given the film 5 out of 5 stars. A lot of 5 stars. "Literally shaking and crying. The man has Dune it again."
Punny.
Pun. Very... Justin Moi has given the film 5 out of 5 stars and says, "The end credits were rolling and I was just seated there with my Dune popcorn bucket wondering what we are." Okay. "Damn, it sucks when your boyfriend gets really high and thinks he's Jesus."
I love that. That's the best one. Yeah, actually, to be fair...
Well, can you relate?
They really... No comment. No, joking. Obviously not.
I don't smoke. Just have to put that out there.
No, it just sounds like you do that.
Yeah, no, people are just going to believe me. Okay.
Yeah, that's one thing. I feel like with the spice, they didn't really go into its psychedelic properties at all. Like, Paul has visions, but like, it is a psychedelic drug and it does affect all the Fremen.
Yeah.
And like brings the symbiosis between them. And I think Frank Herbert used magic mushrooms.
When he...
Just generally, I think.
I mean, clearly.
I'll try fact check this afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually quite a good point that you make.
But you don't really get that whole psychedelic vibe from the Fremen.
No.
From Paul. And that could have been fun. Like, Midsummer did the whole psychedelic thing really well. That could have been interesting in the desert. But it was a choice not to. And I understand, like, it might have just been a bit too much.
Yeah. No, exactly. I hope Austin Butler gets trapped doing the Feyd-Rautha voice like he did with Elvis. Austin Butler, man. Sergio Munoz Esquire gave the film 4 out of 5. Says Stellan Skarsgård as the whale part 2. We ran into Stellan Skarsgård.
Oh my god, yeah, on Oxford Street.
We were walking on Oxford Street and he kind of just walked past us and we looked at each other like, holy fucking shit, that was Stellan Skarsgård. They just randomly... Yeah. Molly has given the film 4.5 out of 5 stars, saying, "Why did Austin Butler go in for seconds while kissing his uncle? Oh, hell no." Oh my god. That's so true. Why did Austin Butler go in for seconds when kissing his uncle? Oh, hell no.
No.
You know how these Harkonnens move, man. They're moving mad. Kylo has given the film 4.5 out of 5 stars and says, cinematic, striking, and louder than ever. I loved Timothée Chalamet channeling a prequel Anakin Skywalker. Austin Butler also impressively didn't let his Elvis voice slip out once. Good for you, Austin. Tino Han says, every frame, a painting part 2. Fremen, huh? Get it? Huh?
I don't know.
That's how impressive your review was, Tino. I still liked it though. Brian Espita has given the film 4.5 out of 5 stars and says, need a friend like Stilgar to hype me up all the time.
Oh,
True.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
who's your Stilgar equivalent?
What, in my life?
Yeah. Like, who's the hype person in your life?
Probably you.
Damn right. Noen has given the film 5 out of 5 stars and says, when I die, please play a Hans Zimmer soundtrack so I can finally rest in peace. Thank you. I mean,
I feel like I would play Hans Zimmer at your funeral.
What would you play though? Like, from which film? See, I'm going to judge the fuck out of you.
See, you can't do that to me. That would be like months planning. I don't know.
All right, clearly.
Sorry. Interstellar, maybe?
You just hear the, what's it? No Time for Caution. Yeah, and finally we have Zoe Rose Bryant, who gave the film 5 out of 5 stars and says, I would be so easily manipulated by someone claiming to be a messiah because the scene where Paul learns how to ride a sandworm made me believe in God again. It was a very good scene.
Touching.
Yeah, great. I think that's everything. I think we covered the majority of things we want to cover. We're probably going to kick ourselves with, oh my God, we didn't remember this, because it's such a
huge
film. But thank you, Gorgeous, for coming on and talking Dune Part 2 with me. It's been fun. I think this episode is like longer than usual. So thank you guys, if you're still here, for tuning in, listening to us just nerd out about this film. So yeah, guys, thanks so much for watching and listening. Please do leave your thoughts on Dune Part 2 in the comment section down below. If you want to send us a DM on Instagram, anything like that. We'd love to know what you thought.
Hoodie.
Oh yeah.
What, your Dune hoodie?
Yeah.
It was too hot in here.
Yeah, just do it. Show it before, like, there we go. There we go. We came prepared. But yeah, on that note, guys, I think we're going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Thank you, Clara, for coming and
thank you.
Talking about the film. And we will catch you very soon in the next episode of the Popcorn Podcast. Cheers.